Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 188 as we come to what I believe to be the maybe anti-penultimate discussion session that we're going to have in the Council of Elrond. I don't know what we are going to do with ourselves when we finish the council. It's going to be so weird to be discussing a different chapter. Yeah, 3 slides left, Mad Violinist. So it's okay, but don't worry. I have a plan. I come equipped with a delaying tactic tonight. But anyway, just a quick reminder tonight, a quick Myth Moot reminder. I saw folks talking about Myth Moot there on Discord before the session began. And so I just wanted to remind folks, go to signumuniversity.org/mythmoot, and you can find all the information on Mythmoot, including registration information and schedule information and all that kind of stuff. We are excited for Mythmoot to come. I'm making travel plans and really just so much looking forward to seeing folks again. But now let us get into here's my plan. My plan is to go backwards to prevent moving forwards too rashly. First, a little piece of commentary. I noticed recently that somebody was observing that I didn't do as many questions from the discussion board recently as I used to do. There's a reason why... There's a reason why that's true. And the reason why that's true is that, so lately, you guys have been engaging in these long and really interesting threads on the Questions for Narnian section. And originally that was not the purpose of that board. I feel bad. I don't want to discourage anyone because you guys are having really interesting discussions. And I like to see interesting discussions. But it's very hard for me to wade through them and make slides out of them because I can't really do justice to the full conversation. And I feel churlish, like responding to the original question as if the whole rest of the conversation hadn't happened. Not to mention the fact that it takes me forever. Like I don't even often have time to read through all of the comments on all of the sections. So originally, the idea for the Questions for Narnian section in the discussion board was like just questions so that it would be easier for me to go through and pull out questions to talk about here in class. So that's been a little bit harder lately. But like I said, I don't really want to discourage folks because they've been really good discussions. So it's kind of, I don't know. It kind of is what it is. Here's one question that I did want to respond to that Rachel was asking. And Rachel, this is kind of, I'm going to pull a twofer here and quote this question and respond to your other one. So in the discussion of Bilbo's motivations for offering to take the ring to the fire, I couldn't help thinking about an earlier scene when Frodo wakes up the morning of the council more than a year ago. He finds Gandalf and Bilbo talking together. I imagine in that conversation, Bilbo tells Gandalf about his experience the night before and what he has finally realized about the ring and its effect on him after seeing it in Frodo's face. Gandalf may or may not have witnessed that dangerous moment, that is, in the Hall of Fire, I assume, and also witnessed Bilbo's diffusing the situation, so he may have introduced the subject in some way, or Bilbo might have brought up that final scene at Bag End and his new understanding, and perhaps a little accusation and a question of what Gandalf knew about the ring at that time, but I think there was probably a better understanding of and affection for one another, and a shared concern for Frodo when Frodo appears. I would love to have heard that conversation. I think that that's a really wonderful observation, Rachel. And it had been so long that I was forgetting, though we should have brought up, which is why I was happy to raise your question here today. You're absolutely right that we should be recalling in the exchange between Bilbo and Gandalf that we've been looking at the last couple weeks. We should be recalling that is how the chapter began, right? The chapter begins with Frodo waking up on his own, but when he comes out, he does meet Bilbo and Gandalf talking to each other. And I agree, of course, we have no way of knowing for sure what they were talking about, but it would certainly be interesting. It would be interesting to know, and it would certainly make sense if they were discussing that a little bit more. I would think in particular that Bilbo would be the one particularly motivated to talk to Gandalf more, because when he says, I think I understand things a little better now, I think that one of the things most likely on his list of things that he understands better after his experience in the Hall of Fire is why Gandalf has treated him the way that he has, right? The why Gandalf had, he at least was sort of feigning like he didn't understand why, remember these comments like odd sort of remark, just like Gandalf. Remember that when he was talking to Frodo the night before. And, to some extent, I think on some level, Bilbo might be kind of playing a little bit dumb there. Like, I don't think that he is genuinely like, I have no idea what that wizard was on about. Like, I really doubt that he was quite so clueless as he kind of made it. I think he was trying to pass it off a little bit. And kind of downplay it in his tone there when he was relaying it. And yet, nevertheless, it seems unquestionably true that he did not really understand what Gandalf was about and why Gandalf was acting that way. So I would definitely wonder. I would definitely suspect, I should say, that might have been the conversation that Bilbo started with Gandalf that morning. His conversation with Gandalf might have started something like, I understand things a bit better now, right? And that seems to me very likely, very likely. But a couple things, though. Rachel, this is where I want to do the twofer and address your other question too. You were sort of wanting to defend exactly, but you were objecting to the idea, or at least resistant to the idea, that Gandalf was being careful with Bilbo in how he was responding to Bilbo's offer, not being sure how Bilbo was going to respond, and that you saw mostly affection and tenderness on Gandalf's part. Now, I wholly agree about the affection and tenderness, 100%. And certainly I, was not communicating clearly if I suggested that he was not being affectionate, wholeheartedly affectionate towards Bilbo throughout that entire paragraph. But I'm willing to defend cautious. And I don't think that conversation prevents that or makes it unlikely even. First of all, remember that Bilbo's own actions and words earlier on, right? Like what Gandalf's own experience of Bilbo's dealing with this earlier on when he was going to give up the ring, right? Remember Bilbo's like, I can't seem to make up my mind. That being divided in mind, feeling one way at one point and with part of his mind and another way with another part of his mind, that was the pattern before, right? So does Bilbo understand it more clearly? Does Bilbo, do they have perhaps that morning a conversation in which Bilbo shares with Gandalf his new insight into the hold that the ring had over him and his new appreciation for Gandalf's tact and his undertakings? That all seems very possible. I'm perfectly willing to believe all of those things, but I don't think that means that Gandalf's not going to be cautious with Bilbo. Does he think that there might be an element of Bilbo of ring temptation in Bilbo when he makes this offer? Yeah, I do. I still do think that he is uncertain and concerned about that. And what's more, I think he's right to be concerned. I don't think that Bilbo is as wholehearted as all that. I really don't. I think that Bilbo is still struggling. I think Bilbo is gonna be struggling for the whole rest of his life. Bilbo has given up the ring. Bilbo has triumphed. Like, I'm not trying to take a thing away from Bilbo, not one thing. But nobody has ever studied the after effects of giving up the ring. Nobody knows. In fact, wouldn't it fit with Gandalf's affection for Bilbo not to want to not put Bilbo in the position of having to do the same heroic thing again and again and again, right? Because that's very well what it might be. I don't believe that Bilbo gave up the ring at Bag End, and it was heroic. He needed Gandalf's help, but that was a heroic act. Bilbo gave up the ring again the night before in the Hall of Fire. That too was a heroic act. Bilbo's laughter, as I was suggesting last time, is an important turning point, I think. And I think he's done it again. Right? I think that Bilbo has, like, once again, a third time, at least three, triumphed over the desire of the ring. In all honesty, I think it might have been more often than that. I bet you that Bilbo was having some desires and rationalizations while he was sitting by Frodo's bedside as well. I bet you. Right? I mean, I'd bet good odds on that, actually. So Bilbo, and yes, like, is he succeeding? Is Bilbo triumphing? Is Bilbo showing himself to be a hero and to be triumphing again and again? Yes, exactly. But it's exactly Gandalf's affection for Bilbo, which is going to make him cautious, right? Not take that for granted, not, kind of breeze lightly past it. I mean, I think that there's, right, as Lysalinda says, once addicted to a thing, always addicted to a thing. Yeah, I mean, I do think that's, I do think that that's something that is a very relevant analogy. And JJ, just as you say, I mean, you meet very few recovered alcoholics who are casual social drinkers thereafter, successfully, right? Without falling off the wagon again. I mean, that's not usually the pattern of overcoming addiction. And I think that Gandalf is not only too wise, but too kind to ask Bilbo to do that, basically. And of course, what he would be asking, I mean, if he were actually sending Bilbo on the quest or something, it would be even worse, right? But Bjorning in Exile, I agree. It's not just affection and tenderness, but also sympathy. He knows. Nobody knows better than Gandalf, who had to, like, help him, who was right there engaging his will with Bilbo's will to assist him in resisting the pull of the ring back in Bag End. Nobody knows better than Gandalf what it cost Bilbo, what it means for him, in seeing his response, right, his reaction upon, the kind of the rebound, right, once he did, his kind of spiritual rebound, once he did give the ring up again. I think, I think there's really a lot there. And Matt, I'd have to agree. I think that, he says, I think the biggest reason for Gandalf to be cautious is that Bilbo's the only one ever to walk away from the One Ring, and the chances of his doing so twice is uncertain, to say the best. That Bilbo does seem to step away a second time here is unfathomable. Agreed. Even 3 times, right, if you want to count it all. But again, like, that doesn't mean, like, oh, well, like, he's had so much practice, right? I mean, again, like, do you say to a successful, an alcoholic, a former alcoholic who is successfully walking in sobriety, right? Well, look, you've been doing such a great job, not falling back into alcoholism over these last few years that, now, like, I'm going to give you a job as a bartender or whatever. Like, that's, no, like that reasoning does not really hold. That's not kind. That's not thoughtful or wise or affectionate. So anyway, yeah, I do think, yeah, Burning in Exile, I agree. You know, there's a way in which it's one of the things that I've been really taking from these past few weeks. I have come away not only with a great appreciation for the thoughtfulness and the compassion and empathy and tact of Gandalf's words there, but with great admiration for Bilbo. I think in a lot of ways, I reading the chapter at speed, reading this chapter at 1x instead of, 0.001x like we've been doing, so to use audiobook terminology. But reading the chapter at 1x, I find that I've tended in the past, I think, to basically get kind of taken in by Bilbo's joke. Like, Bilbo couches his offer, his comments, he sort of submerges the heroism of what he's doing on multiple levels of what he's doing there, under a joke, right? Under hobbitry. And of course, his hobbitry there is so delightful. Both the first time, right, in the kind of hobbitish dark humor of must end it or himself, but even more so with his crack at Gandalf, about good advice and bad advice, right? I've always so loved Bilbo's hobbitry in that moment, and even in part because I have always, for so many years shared Glóin's smile of affection, right? From old memories of Bilbo. So I've always, my response has always been so wrapped up in those things that I've never fully, I think, followed Gandalf's lead to listen carefully to what Bilbo was saying under jest, and therefore what Gandalf himself was saying. So anyway, yeah. Yeah, Rachel, no, I hear you that you were talking about what Gandalf might be expecting in response. Maybe expecting, Rachel, is not the right word there. I don't think that Gandalf is like anticipating, like expecting in the sense that he believes it overwhelmingly probable that Bilbo's going to freak out, right? I'm not saying that. Fearing, dreading lest he might, concerned lest that be, I don't think Gandalf can possibly be blithely confident, no matter what they talked about that morning, no matter what insight Bilbo has seen. It's not going to make him immune to temptation. It's not going to mean that other part of his mind is going to not be there and not be active. So, like, because I do think Bilbo succeeds again, like he triumphs again in that moment, especially in that moment of laughter when he responds to Gandalf with laughter. He's triumphed again. And Gandalf has too much affection and too much empathy for him to merely assume that that's going to happen. The other thing, Rachel, that I would say in particular about that moment, that moment of caution, at least that I'm arguing is caution, is the syntax thing. Gandalf does sometimes speak with great affection. But even when he speaks with great affection, it doesn't screw up his syntax. Gandalf doesn't stumble over his sentence. It just doesn't happen very often, right? Those two sentence fragments in a row where Gandalf is interrupting himself, right? He's not in that moment able to maintain a smooth flow of dialogue, right? He himself is like saying two things at once there, right? Stumbling over himself in his attempt to kind of reassure Bilbo in multiple directions at the same time, right? And again, and I don't just hear affection. It's theoretically possible that one could hear this as Gandalf feeling so affectionate towards Bilbo that he's getting like choked up, and therefore his sentences are being kind of messed up for that reason. But again, I don't hear that. It doesn't sound. That just doesn't sound like that fits the tone of what Gandalf is doing there. It sounds instead like he's reaching for reasons, reaching for ways to soften what he's going to say, which is, it is passed on, right? That he's reluctant to actually just utter the independent clause that he is building up to, right? And so he's throwing other things in, and that sounds like uncertainty. That sounds like a certain degree of anxiety about Bilbo's reaction. And I agree with Mike that it makes Bilbo more heroic if there is another struggle. Like if it does not, in my opinion, doesn't lessen Bilbo at all, or Gandalf's opinion of Bilbo. For Gandalf to be empathetic to the potential additional, further, or renewed struggle that Bilbo is likely to be going through in that time, it could be possible to say, like, well, you know, Bilbo's already aced his test at least twice prior to this, and he and Gandalf talked about it that morning, and Gandalf knows that he's aced the tests and everything, so there's nothing to worry about with Bilbo, and there's no reason for Gandalf to be uncertain. One can say that, but again, in my mind, that doesn't increase sort of Bilbo's status. I think it's the more increased and Gandalf's own sensitivity to and affection for Bilbo and compassion for Bilbo is also greatly increased by that sort of additional layer of sort of sensitivity and awareness that he has resisted before, and here he's doing it again because he's got to do it again. Anyway, okay. Anyway, so thanks, Rachel, for bringing that up. I'm happy to go back there again, but here we are, up to the big line, up to what I think is the this is the center of the whole thing, right? Not the center. This is the culmination, right? The entire, my title for the session tonight was, that's what this council business was all about, really. Paraphrasing, of course, Bilbo's quote about the party back in chapter 1. I believe that the entire Council of Elrond, I think that they threw the Council of Elrond, like they put on the Council of Elrond. Like Elrond held a council, right, for this moment, in order to lead up to Frodo's uttering that sentence. I think that was the point of the entire council, was for Frodo to utter that sentence. Anyway, here we go. No one answered. The noon bell rang. Still no one spoke. Frodo glanced at all the faces, but they were not turned to him. All the council sat with downcast eyes, as if in deep thought. A great dread fell on him, as if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom that he had long foreseen and vainly hoped might after all never be spoken. An overwhelming longing to rest and remain at peace by Bilbo's side in Rivendell filled all his heart. At last with an effort he spoke, and wondered to hear his own words, as if some other will was using his small voice. "I will take the ring," he said, "though I do not know the way." Okay. Silk Waistcoat, I do believe that noon bell is hyphenated because it's a particular bell. Like, it's not just a bell that rings and they're like, oh, was that? Oh yeah, it's noon, right? That's not what's happening here. Like, the noon bell would sound different. I don't usually choke up myself at that last sentence, though I understand why many do. It's just not usually what makes me cry Eucatastrophe is what makes me cry. Oh man, like, wait till we get to the passage that makes me cry every single time I read The Lord of the Rings. Aragorn arriving at the Harlond is what makes me cry every time. I'm starting to cry just thinking about it. Better stop. But anyway, so and can I? Right, Flammifer, I agree. I'm always surprised by the fact of the noon bell also. Like, seriously, it's only noon. Bilbo didn't actually miss a meal. He's just was worried that he might. I totally thought it must be like sunset already, right? Right, he missed second breakfast. Yeah, truly. Yeah. Right, JJ's wondering perhaps did they rig the noon bell to be rung later on, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's possible. Okay, you're right. Yeah. Several people are correcting me that, of course, if he's going straight from first breakfast to lunch, Bilbo has missed several meals, right? Even if nobody else did. Yeah. No one answered. Do you remember what no one is answering? Can't we, right, pick some names or put it off till after dinner? Right? Who are they to be? Mad Violinist. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, it's true that a reading of the whole council takes about 2 hours, but remember, Elrond's story is summarized in a couple sentences. And in those sentences, we are told that he speaks for hours. That like the sun has moved a significant quantity while Elrond speaks. Not to mention there's another part of the council that is also slid over at the very beginning, right? When we're told that like tales of various kinds are discussed at that point. So there's at least 2 sections in addition to the actual dialogue that we're given that are definitely included. Right, good. Yeah, Bilbo and Frodo stories as well, Kurtzimus. Yeah, exactly. Chapter 5 of The Hobbit is, if you don't omit a single riddle, is quite a long read itself. About an hour or so, at least. So, yeah, exactly. And Frodo not only recounts his story, but also answers questions, is interrupted frequently, right? So yeah. And the squirrels, Nancy, absolutely. This is not even to mention the squirrels. So yeah, no, it's we don't know exactly when they started, but it could have been early. But anyway, okay. Frodo glanced at all the faces, but they were not turned to him. All the council sat with downcast eyes as if in deep thought. Let's pause there for a second. What do we think they're thinking? The rest of the council. What do they think they're thinking? Right, not me. Yeah, some of them very well might be thinking that, right? Possibly they're examining themselves to see if they should go. That does seem possible. Yeah. Not it is possible, except Argent suggests Boromir might be thinking, maybe me, right? Right, yeah, Ashnaz was thinking the same thing. Is Boromir trying to think of a way tactfully to volunteer? Yeah. Admiral Malcontent, it is possible that they're shamed here. It is, I think that is possible, right? That they don't want to volunteer. And I agree about the downcast eyes, right? They're not just like in puzzled expressions or as if in deep thought, right? Are they contemplating who would be wise to send, right? You know, I mean, what would be the best counsel here? Are they trying to read what might sound almost like a riddle that Elrond has set them about strength and wisdom, right? And small hands doing them because they must. You know, I mean, is Glorfindel sitting there saying, well, I was going to volunteer, but if I'm picking up what he's putting down, Elrond thinks I shouldn't go, right? Like Elrond thinks it would be bad if I went, right? Yeah, exactly, Nancy. I don't think Glorfindel's afraid, but is he, you know, basically saying like, okay, I don't know and can't see what Elrond is getting at here exactly. Do they all suspect that it must be Frodo, Tim? I wonder that. I do. Frodo wonders that, right? He's glancing around, but they're not turned to him. Frodo's glance is very telling, right? He is feeling as if they must all be thinking about him. They must all be looking at him, right? And I think, in my opinion, yeah, I agree. I think that that's a question that they might well be thinking. Who would be wise enough to resist the ring? Could anyone do it? Remember, as you're probably thinking, I think that was what was in their head earlier on when they started talking about Tom. That's why Tom Bombadil came up before, right? Hey, Tom Bombadil seems safe with the ring in the sense that he doesn't seem tempted by it. So, yeah, maybe him or somebody else like him. But who else is like him, right? Yeah. And it's a big deal, Matt. I agree. The fate of the West hangs on this answer. Yes. No one is wanting to speak rashly. But again, Frodo feels like he expects them all to be looking at him. Like, aren't you going to volunteer? Like they're being polite in not volunteering him. Now, I don't know. I don't know. This is why I wanted to pause on all the council sat with downcast eyes. Because on the one hand, I don't necessarily believe that everybody in the room actually is looking at Frodo, even if not with their eyes, right? That they're all like sitting there like, come on, Frodo. It's obvious it's you, right? But I'm not going to volunteer you. So I'm going to wait it out until the Hobbit finally says what he's supposed to say. I don't really believe that that's what they're thinking. But at the same time, Elrond has dropped a lot of hints. And I suspect that at least some of them are wise enough, right? Not sure about Galdor, but I think that many of the rest of them might be wise enough to pick up what he's putting down on that point, right? And to see clearly, signs do point to Frodo, don't they? Right? And they're waiting for Celeborn to arrive. The perfect candidate. Yeah. Who's used to not elevating himself? Who is comfortable with being, not the smartest person in the room? Who never tries to get above himself? Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point, Cook of Wootton Minor. Cook of Wootton Minor points out that I think the other thing here is that he's already the ring bearer. Like, Frodo has the ring. He has to give it up before anyone else can take it. Right. No, I agree. I agree. That's an interesting point, right? If one of them, see, and this is another thing. There are two things. And again, I don't want anybody to think I'm just dissing on the Peter Jackson adaptation. Their handling of the Council of Elrond was really powerful. I thought it worked very well in the film. I really like how it comes across in the film, but there are a bunch of differences, right? And there are a couple really important differences here, right? One, Frodo puts the ring on the table in the middle and then goes back to his seat. Frodo has given up the ring in the film, right? It's just sitting there. So he volunteers to take it up again, right? But the way that that's kind of tossed off in the film, right? Like Frodo just like puts it on the table and it's like, no big deal, whatever. Like there's the ring, right? That is not how it goes, right? That is, he's showed it to the room, right? But he is still the ring bearer. And we've seen several times already that Frodo's going to have a hard time giving it up, right? He's already in the past had a hard time giving it up. So that's a huge deal. Musical, the way they do it in the film, it absolutely is. They have the ring set. And again, I love the way it works in the film. I think it like visually, it's very cool. The way that the ring is the focal point of the whole discussion and everything. It's beautiful in the film, but it is a giving up. It is a giving up the ring because you're putting it in the center of the room, equidistant from everybody. Everybody has an equal shot at the ring to the extent where, Film Gimli tries to hack at it with his axe, which is one of the silliest moments in that scene. Yes, and it seems an altar of sacrifice, Green Great Dragon. I agree. It is almost like that, right? There is the moment of Frodo putting it there. This is not like, I'm just going to drop this here, but everybody, this is still mine, right? I mean, no, he has surrendered it to the council at that point, and the council is all considering it. And then there's this open question of who's going to take it up, right? Until in the end, he takes it up again. Right. But anyway, so that's one thing that I strongly disagree with about or rather a strong departure, right, from the book in the film. The second thing that I was just thinking of, though, and I'll just mention this off the side, I've always really disliked the facial expression that Gandalf pulls. I hate that. Like, I mean, it's kind of sweet. Again, it's nice, but it always annoyed me, right? When Frodo volunteers and Gandalf does that thing, like I was afraid that was going to happen, like, oh Frodo, you didn't, did you? I've always disliked that. That is not Gandalf's relationship with this situation, right? Gandalf knows. Gandalf said so. When Gandalf was looking at him in the last chapter while he was still in bed, that business about like he may become like a clear light shining, for those who see who can, like he knows Frodo is going to empty himself, right? That Frodo is going to be, Frodo is going to sacrifice himself, and Gandalf, is going to let him do it. I like it in that. I like the element that in the film that it shows the personal connection, like his personal compassion for Frodo. But like the idea that Gandalf was like hoping that it wouldn't come to this, right? Hoping that like maybe it would go to someone else. Like who else is it going to go to? Like I dislike trying to build up Gandalf's compassion at the expense of his brains, because it doesn't really work. Anyway. Yeah. Interesting. I'd forgotten that. Matt says Peter Jackson asked Ian McKellen to play it as if he heard his son volunteering to serve at the front in World War I. Yeah, exactly. That's just the face that it looks like. And that's And again, it's like, does Gandalf feel something of that? Maybe. Yeah, I'm not denying that he feels a connection to Frodo, and that he feels compassion for Frodo. But he was not hoping it wouldn't come to this. He knows. He knows. And not only does he know, I think that he's been contriving at this. Like, this has been his plan from the beginning. This has been his plan. He's been, but, Gil-Gunther, exactly. Gandalf knows that it has to come to this and has been working for years to get to this point. Yes, exactly. Now again, like, does he feel compassion for Frodo? Of course he does. Of course he does. And he's expressed that already, right? But again, this point, they still had to get to this point, right? And again, I really believe there's no other reason to even have a council. What comes of this council? Like, what is the council what the council is stronger than Morgul spells that's taken? Like, what? I don't think Elrond needed the council to make up his mind. Maybe he did. I don't want to overstate that. It's possible, right? That Elrond, we talked about the line where he says, if I understand now aright all that I have heard, suggesting that he did gain some insight and some certitude from what he had heard that day. But yeah, Admiral Malcontent, I think it's a good way to say it, that the council seems to have been for Frodo's benefit. Yeah. He has to, if he doesn't volunteer, this thing will be a disaster. Nobody can name him. He can't be drafted. He can't. He has to volunteer. If he doesn't choose this, it won't work. No way it'll work, right? And this, of course, helps us to understand why Elrond has been so gentle all the way up through, right? We must send the ring to the fire. Gandalf's the messengers, plural, who are sent with the ring. There's several times when either one of them could have been more pointed, even if indirect, right? It could have said, Gandalf could have said something like, "He who is sent with the ring," right, or "He who will bear the ring," pointing to, looking significantly at Frodo or whatever. I mean, there are lots of ways in which they could have been more direct, more pointed than they were, but they've left it up until at this moment. Frodo is feeling the call. Now, I agree. It's not that there's nothing else that happened at the council. I agree that it's a summons of sorts for Aragorn, and that's important. In particular, there's clearly some business that's being transacted on a big picture, right? Some sort of prophetic business that's being transacted between Boromir and Aragorn, with the whole seek for the sword that was broken thing, right? Aragorn is going to admit later that we're going to be told later that Aragorn believes that Boromir's dream, that the Boromir's verse is a summons, right? That he believes he got some mail during this meeting, right? So Aragorn certainly feels that this is not the only item on the agenda, right? But I still don't, that's not, I think, central to the council, nor was the council itself totally necessary. Presumably Elrond would have shared with him the words from Boromir, and Aragorn would have still received them in the same way, even if it hadn't come out in front of the whole council, right? So, but now I've not been avoiding the questions that you guys are pushing towards here. But I've been deliberately saving them. I believe from that fourth sentence on, Frodo glanced at all the faces, but they were not turned to him. We are already seeing evidence that Frodo is feeling an internal pressure of some kind to volunteer, right? I take that. I don't think it's like fear or paranoia that is leading him to say, like, they're not thinking about me, are they? Are they going to volunteer me? Right? I don't think that's what it's in his mind there. I think he is, no one has answered, the noon bell rings, and still no one speaks. That no one very significantly including Frodo, right? I think Frodo knows what he is supposed to do, and he's looking around to see if anybody else knows what he's supposed to do as well, right? He is perhaps dreading to see a confirmation in the eyes of others looking towards him. Again, I don't think this is fear. I think this is self-awareness in some sense. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have several times in my life felt never more sure of what I was supposed to do than when I felt very strongly that I really, really would rather not do it. And I feel that I can relate to what it seems to me Frodo is likely feeling here. A great dread falls on him, as if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom that he had long foreseen and vainly hoped might after all never be spoken. Some doom, some judgment, right? A doom that is spoken is not, of course, a terrible thing happening, right? This is not doom in the much narrower modern sense, right? He's awaiting the pronouncement of a doom, the declaration of a judgment. And what's the difference between, when the Valar agree in council that something should be done, and then Mandos says it, right? Mandos proclaims it as doomsman of the Valar. What's the difference in the before and after of Mandos's proclamations of those kind, right? He doesn't, the thing is decided beforehand, right? But when the doomsman pronounces it, when a doom is pronounced, it is enacted. It goes, it goes from could be to should be. I would even say to is, right? Or even perhaps Rayburn's from should be to is, right? Good. Yeah, Michael D., that's a great way to say it. Mandos makes the decision effectual. It moves from being a desired state to an actual state. It becomes a fact. Yes. Good. And I totally agree with you about Saruman's staff, Admiral, but we'll get to that later on. Yes, Matt, like by the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife, right? Yes, like that. It is at that moment, right? It is true then, right? When that happens. Exactly. Erev Numenor, as you say, in linguistics, we call that a performative speech act. Yes. And this is he's been awaiting the pronouncement of some doom. He's foreseen it, right? He has felt that it was going to happen. So the reason I think the way that I do about that earlier sentence, about him glancing at the faces, is because of what is said here, right? That's the state that I think is being described here. He knows what's supposed to happen. He knows that it is his doom to be the ring bearer. Gandalf tried to remember, what Gandalf said you were meant to find the ring and that might be a comforting thought. And Frodo says, it is not a comforting thought, right? It's not a comforting thought because you've been like ordained by Providence to be the carrier of the ring under the circumstances when you've just found out that Sauron, with all of the forces of Mordor, is pursuing with hatred and desire to attempt to find you. That is not a comforting thought, right? That you should be the one who has been appointed to carry the ring. Gandalf tries to throw him a bone later on in that same conversation when he says, it may be your role, right, to find the cracks of doom, or that task may be for others, he says. Right. Yeah, tell yourself that, Frodo. Maybe that task will be for others. But I don't think that that is much consolation. I don't think even Gandalf really means it at that. I think that Gandalf also sees. He is trying to help Frodo. I don't think he's just offering Frodo false hope either. Like, I don't think it's the case that Gandalf is like, oh no, you're totally hosed, Frodo. I don't want to admit it, right? You know, I'm trying to cheer you up by giving you false hope that maybe it won't be you after all, but we both know it's you, right? But I'm just saying this to make you feel better. I don't think that's what Gandalf is doing, right? Instead, I think that the message that he is, by saying to Frodo, that quest may be for others, right? I think that what he is saying is, it is your choice. It is your choice. He does not want Frodo, even back then, he does not want Frodo to feel trapped, merely trapped. Like he doesn't have any choice at all. Gandalf carefully leaves an escape hatch open for him back then in Bag End, right? Yeah. Yeah. Now, Cook of Wootton Minor, I am not sure that there is such a big difference between those two things as you are suggesting. You're saying you don't think that the Doomsman holds the power to make what will be. It's more like a prophecy that a Doomsman is the one who sees clearly the working of other powers and predicts them in prophecy. But again, it's not a prediction. Mandos is not speaking in the future tense. He speaks in the present tense. He does speak in the future tense also, I know. But no, like as Doomsman, when he makes his decree, he is enacting them. I'm not saying that all of the power rests in him. I'm not saying he's like, by the power of me. I say even in the wedding ceremony that Matt and I were quoting before, the celebrant at the wedding service isn't saying, by my own power I pronounce you Mano. He says, by the authority vested in me, right? And Mandos does the same thing. So it's not about his power to make the thing be. It's not that his power is that over, but what he is doing is declaring the thing that it is. He's not predicting that it will be, right? He's not merely perceiving and observing. He is perceiving and observing, but he's perceiving and observing that this is what is, and it is from that point on. So as I say, I don't think that there is such a wide gap between the two things that you are sort of opposing to each other, as you're suggesting. Right. Admiral Malcontent was saying a similar thing. It's not that the Doomsman is wielding power exactly. Anyway, okay. But again, back to that sentence, because I want to try to piece out the dread, right? To kind of work through the dread that he's feeling here, because I think that that's easy. It would be easy to misunderstand that. Mike, as you were saying before, I absolutely agree. In fact, I would insist on reading this passage that there's a huge difference between dread and fear. They are not the same. Is he afraid? Sure. I've no doubt he's afraid. But the dread that he feels, I think, is different. As if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom. Okay. I can't forbear. Here's a project. And this is a difficult project because it's going to be almost impossible to do with a simple text search. But here's a project. What are the patterns in how Tolkien uses the subjunctive voice? Or the subjunctive mood, rather? Because he doesn't use the subjunctive mood there. He doesn't say as if he were awaiting the pronouncement of some doom. He says as if he was awaiting, indicative mood, the pronouncement of some doom. And I can't figure out whether that's significant. And the primary reason I can't think whether or not that's significant is because I have noticed a few other times Tolkien not using the subjunctive when I might have expected him to use the subjunctive, in if clauses in particular. Further research is indicated on this point. But given my I don't have anything like sufficient data here. So Johannes, let me talk a little bit about what the difference is. So those two different moods of verbs. Generally, one uses in English the subjunctive mood in an if clause when you are stating like a potential possibility or something contrary to fact, as if he were awaiting the pronouncement, would be like, so I think he's not using the subjunctive probably because, so an if clause doesn't have to be contrary to fact. So here's the classic, right? The classic subjunctive usage, or rather the classic place where the subjunctive should be used but isn't, which like the line of song which has annoyed English majors for generations now, and many of you surely know the song that I'm referring to, classic song of decades past, Simon and Garfunkel song, right? That does not use the subjunctive mood, where it absolutely screamingly should use the subjunctive mood. Of course, I am referring to Homeward Bound. The chorus of Simon and Garfunkel's Homeward Bound. Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward bound. No, I wish I were homeward bound. Wish clauses are the classic example of when you use the subjunctive mood. I wish I were homeward bound, because the whole premise of the song is that he's not homeward bound. That's what he's wishing for, but he isn't, right? You use the indicative mood to describe what is, right? You use the subjunctive to describe what you're wishing for, but which, and this is not the only way that you use the subjunctive mood, but it's one of the classic usages of the subjunctive mood. Anyway, so it's possible that in using the indicative here, what Tolkien is doing is saying, a great dread fell on him as if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom. on account of he kind of was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom. That's not theoretical. That's not contrary to fact, right? That is in fact, it was like that, right? It was as if that, because that is sort of what it was, right? That he's, anyway, there are other, there are lots of other examples of subjunctive. I'm trying to think of other famous Tolkien quotes. Oh yeah, Éowyn uses the subjunctive in a different context. Yes, but she uses it in the present tense, which is even cooler. Why am I blanking on the first noun that she uses? Be ye, doesn't she use the subjunctive there? For be ye, something, or dark undead, I will slay you, I will smite you if you touch him. The use of be there, that's the present subjunctive that she uses. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting totally lost in grammar now. But the subjunctive mood, it's a dying art, the subjunctive mood, but I am certainly convinced that it's an art with which Tolkien was very familiar. She doesn't actually use, right, if you be not deathless, right? Begone if you be not deathless. I knew she used it in that sentence. For living or dark undead, which is again parallel, the same construction. I will smite you. And then she switches to the indicative. I will smite you if you touch him. Yeah, begone if you be not deathless. Again, an if clause, right? In the theoretical case that you be not deathless, you should be gone. Yes. Does Feanor's oath do that as well? Oaths sometimes do. I don't think so, though. No, I think it does. I think the verbs, the parallel verbs, take or keep, I think those are in the subjunctive as well. Yeah. But anyway, sorry. Let's, not enough data here. But I just want to flag that. So other grammar nerds can join me in watching out for non-usages of the subjunctive in cases where the subjunctive might perhaps be suggested. Yeah. Well, there we are. Trifle. Yep. Subjunctive all through the Oath of Feanor. Be he foe or friend, be he foul or clean, brood of Morgoth or bright Vala, be he any of those things, blah, 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 shall defend him from Feanor, whoso hideth or in hand taketh, finding, keepeth, or afar casteth a Silmaril. I think that those verbs that I was thinking were in the subjunctive are not actually. Well, no, they probably are by extension. This swear we all, that's indicative, right? Switches back to the indicative present and then future. Yeah, interesting. JJ says, I look forward to hearing the results from those who understand grammar much better than I do. All right. We'll come back to this. Maybe we can all learn something more about, including me, about the use of the subjunctive by studying these patterns. So suffice to say, for the moment, he's not using the subjunctive mood here. He's using the indicative mood, as if he was awaiting the pronouncement. Okay. Yeah. Trifle saying that version was not from the published Silmarillion, but from the Annals of Aman. That was the verse version. Okay. Pulling my mind back from grammar. Dread. That's where I was. Dread. As if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom that he had long foreseen and vainly hoped might, after all, never be spoken. Notice, and Lotro players will not be surprised at this. Notice what is opposed to dread. Obviously, right? Again, Lotro players know this. Hope. For those of you who don't play the Lord of the Rings Online, it's the coolest game mechanic in all of the Lord of the Rings Online. That there is a hope and dread mechanic where when you are in the presence like of the Nazgul or something, there is a dread rating that increases, that reduces your strength and your spirit, and cows your spirit in the presence of the dread. And there are other places when you are like in Lothlorien or Rivendell or the Shire, where your hope is high and that strengthens you. So like it is the coolest, most sort of esoterically sensitive piece of game mechanic in any game I've ever seen. It's really, really cool. Anyway, I was just wanting to see. I think now my hope is at 0. I feel neither hope nor dread right now here in Bree, but anyway, it's really neat. But they are exactly right. The Lotro developers got it exactly right. Dread and hope are opposed to each other. A dread falls on him, right? And he had vainly hoped that the doom had not been long foreseen. But why is he feeling great dread? Because of the vanity of his hope, right? He had vainly hoped. He had hoped, but he had hoped in vain, that the doom might never be spoken, might never be pronounced, might never be enacted, right? But notice JJ, that's just what I was about to say. That hope, the vain hope that it might never be spoken, is Umdir hope, right? Not Estel hope. He had been cherishing in a part of his heart, in a part of his mind, the sort of a shred of optimism that maybe it wouldn't come to that, right? That maybe that wouldn't happen. Maybe things would work out better so that he could just stay with Bilbo and rest and not go on this hopeless journey there and not coming back again, right? But he's experiencing this dread, right? This dread, which is the opposite of that hope. Is the dread that falls on him here a bad thing? I don't think it is. It's an anticipation of evil, evil to come, right? The evil that shall befall him, suffering and difficulty and self-sacrifice, right? Dread. Yeah. And I want to be a little bit cautious making this parallel because, I don't want to, reawaken anybody's thoughts towards the simplistic reading of the text. I've always resisted very strongly. But I would compare it to something like the Garden of Gethsemane kind of dread, right? That is what Jesus experiences on the night before his crucifixion in the gospel accounts. I hesitate because, of course, of the sort of old chestnut of, like, you know, the sort of Frodo is a Christ figure reading of the Lord of the Rings, which I've always been very resistant to, just because it's not a very sensitive reading of the text. It's a kind of a grasping at a simple answer, which is not really a good reading. But that parallel, I think, is something that seems apt. Exactly. Just like in the Inferno, Frodo can be parallel to Christ in some cases and not in others. That's exactly it. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, Turambar, exactly. But I'm not going to go into a long exposition of how, you know, Frodo is a Christ figure is a not very satisfying reading. Or at least certainly as a single sentence reading, it's not very satisfying. But anyway, that kind of dread, like that when you know that bad times are coming, right? And you were hoping that they might not come, that you might not have to suffer in ways that you're pretty sure you're going to suffer and quite likely die. A great dread has fallen on him, right? As if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom that he had long foreseen and had hoped might, after all, never be spoken. Notice how, in his imagination in that moment, the as if has him as the victim here, right? Like he's a prisoner, in the dock, waiting for the judge to pass sentence, right? And has been dreading the doom that was going to be spoken over him, right, by the judge. The prisoner has no agency in that. Not at that moment, right? There is nothing. The prisoner is helpless to fend off the doom, right? He is waiting for someone else to pronounce doom upon him, right? And that's the kind of dread that he seems to be having in that moment. And I see, as I said before, the anticipation of that same kind of dread in the glances earlier on, right? Like, somebody's going to say it, right? They're going to say it should be me, right? Aren't they? I bet they are, right? They're all looking at me. Somebody's looking at me, right? Elrond, at least, is going to be looking right at me, telling me non-verbally, pronouncing a non-verbal doom, right? An overwhelming longing to rest and remain at peace by Bilbo's side in Rivendell filled all his heart. At last, with an effort. Right, and then, right, Mike, exactly. They're all pointedly not looking at me, right, exactly. That's the immediate second thought, right? At last, with an effort, he spoke, and wondered to hear his own words, as if some other will was using his small voice. I will take the ring, though I do not know the way. I'll come back to the overwhelming longing, Cook of Wooten Minor. Not sure I don't agree with you. But what do we make of that sentence? With an effort he spoke. He's waiting for the pronouncement of the doom, and it doesn't come. No one answered. Still no one spoke. The doom is never spoken over him until he speaks. With an effort, he speaks. Except Kurtzimus, yeah. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Lissalinda, you're right. Let's go back to that for a second. The difference between fear and dread. Gosh. Can I explain it? I'm not sure I can. Not sure I can explain it. I feel it very clearly. Dread. There's more adrenaline in fear, Tora Marthan. I agree. Is dread a synonym of fear? No, I don't think so. Emily says, I fear lightning or robbers or zombies. I dread having to go stay at someone else's house when I'd rather be at home. Yes. Fear is a sensation. Well, dread can be a sensation too, but yeah, I agree, Dorward. Dread has loathing and anticipation. Yes. Trifle says, I would say fear is an if this thing happens, it will be terrible. Dread is will in the future. This thing will happen and it's terrible. Yes. Dread. Fear is you fear. So hang on, because fear isn't only something that might happen, right? I mean, there could like very definitely be a tiger like running at your face and you'd be afraid, right? So it's not like that fear is less certain than dread, because if you, or, you know, if Emily saw a zombie right in front of her, she'd probably be afraid, right? Right. Brickdale says, I dread doing my taxes. Yes. Good. Kook of Wooten Miner says, fear is what makes you want to run away from the tiger. Dread is the certainty that you cannot escape the tiger. That's interesting. Yeah. Yes, I too have been thinking that fear is the mind killer, but I'm not sure that's very helpful. Yeah. Interesting. Rachel says, fear is fight or flight. Dread has given up on those. Yes. When you feel dread, you're in neither fight nor flight mode. There's a resignation to dread. That is the sound of inevitability, as Hugo Weaving says in a different role. Yeah. That's... I do think, Emma Thorne, I do think that the unescapability of dread, I don't think that you really dread something that you believe you could escape or that you believe you could avoid, right? It's the vanity of his hope. He knows that his hope is vain, right? Like deep down, he knows this. Frodo does, right? And it's that knowledge, it's that vanity, which is why the dread is falling on him. Yeah. Well, I agree that dread is always oriented towards the future. And I do agree, Ashley, that dread and fear can exist simultaneously. I think that that's true. I think that fear you can fear something in the future. I think it's the certainty thing. To me, that's what strikes most true. You might worry or fear that you might worry or fear that you can't pay the rent next month, right? But that's different from the dread of the payment deadline approaching and you know there is no money and there isn't going to be money, right? That's dread. Are we a fan of checking the dictionary? A little bit. I'm not a huge fan of dictionaries. The reason I'm not a huge fan of dictionaries is that a definition in the dictionary is just what somebody else says and usually does not give any justification for. I like the OED because the OED gives me instances, like usages, like shows me where they're getting these definitions, shows me the ways in which people have used this word over time that justifies that definition. Most dictionaries don't do this. They just say, like, here's what this means. Trust us. This is what we think this means. I'm not saying they're always wrong or that I'm always doubtful of them. I'm just saying in a case like this where I'm really trying to figure out what are the connotations, like what are the true differences between these words or concepts, I find dictionaries not often very helpful because they just make authoritative claims with which I disagree or agree or whatever. Etymology is sometimes helpful, but often not, because words wander pretty far from their original meanings. So the fact that this word was originally derived from a word which meant this other thing doesn't necessarily have a lick to do with the modern usage. I mean, it's interesting, like it's fun to know, and sometimes it's useful. But often not. It depends on how far back that usage goes. Another reason why the OED is useful and many other dictionaries are not, because it gives you dates on the time when the word was used in those different ways. Anyway, that's why I'm generally not a huge fan of dictionaries for cases like this. I agree that the flavor of emotion is very different to Heir of Numenor. And I do agree. I think I agree too that dread is more psychological and mental, and is not a thing that animals generally feel. Yes, I agree. I am not at all sure that animals feel dread in the same way. Fear? Yes. Anticipation? Yes. I think so. See, so Valori, sometimes etymology is important where Tolkien is concerned. I agree. Just because he may well be thinking of the etymology, right? And therefore, because he knows the etymology, associating it with this other thing. But even then, I don't think he often just plays like sort of random word association with etymology in that way. Like what he will do is deliberately dial a word back and use it in a sense that no human being has used it in 400 years, because he likes the weight of that old usage, right? Because he really is kind of turning back the clock on that particular word. Like that's something that he does. I mean, like when he uses forebode as a verb, right? That's not a thing that many people do. And I will still never forget when my PhD dissertation reader told me I couldn't do. I used the verb forebode in my dissertation at one point in my discussion of conscience in Piers Plowman. And I said that conscience foreboded this other thing. And he's like, you can't use the word forebode like that. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work as a verb. And I'm like, au contraire, it sure does. But I didn't fight because, it's much easier not to. But anyway, yeah. 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 Anyway, okay, sorry. Yes, Ashnazg, I agree. There's an existential temporal dimension to dread. Someone else used the word resignation before, which I think is the right way to think about it. Dread doesn't require certainty, but just the perception of certainty. Yes, yes. I do believe that, again, what is the opposite of dread? Hope. And therefore, a close cousin of dread is despair. They're not the same thing. They're not identical. I wouldn't call them synonyms, definitely. Yeah. But they're first cousins. Dread and despair are first cousins for sure, right? I do think that it requires that perception of certainty, Ashnazg, as you said. Yes, I agree. Fear does not have the same inevitability. Fear makes you want to run away. Dread doesn't, because there's no point in running. Okay, mad violinist. I'm working out the analogy. So we got an SAT analogy here. Could we say hope is to dread as faith is to despair? Could we say Amdir is to dread as Estel is to despair, mad violinist? I don't know, because despair, Gandalf, when Gandalf was defining despair, he seemed to be defining it in Amdir terms, I think. Like, if you see the end beyond all hope, Amdir, right? Yeah. Right, dread is seeing the end without all doubt. Well, the end of whatever you're dreading, right? The end of your hope of avoiding that bad situation, whatever it is. Yes. Yeah. So again, a close kin to despair. But I would say, thinking in Mad Violinist's directions here, Mad Violinist, the way I think that analogy does work is that, yeah, Ashley, I love that. Ashley on YouTube says, despair is dread winning. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Despair is dread winning. That's what dread winning looks like, is despair. So yeah, Mad Violinist, coming back to your point there. Estel, faith, right, is opposed to despair in the sense that despair isn't just for those who see the end that is the conclusion of this particular chain of events, but like the capital E end, right, who believe that they see the way everything is trending, right, and it's downhill, like Denethor, right? Denethor is the classic illustration of despair. He not only thought that he saw the direction that things were headed for Minas Tirith in the battle that day, he thought he saw the direction things were trending for all of Middle-earth. He thinks he sees the end, and thus despairs, like a capital E end. Dread is more local than that, right? A great despair does not fall on Frodo. He is not without Estel. He is not taking up the ring in despair. He's not taking upon himself the ring with despair. He merely feels dread that this really unpleasant doom is not avoidable anymore. Yeah. Yes, exactly, Cook of Wooten Minor. He says, I'm getting more and more comfortable with the inevitability distinction. One can face dread with the dignity of one who faces the end with no hope of success, save you catastrophe. Yes, and I think that we do see Frodo facing his dread. I can't avoid this. The doom is going to be pronounced. And then he pronounces it. Or does he? At last, with an effort, he spoke, and wondered to hear his own words, as if some other will was using his small voice. Well, we're out of time. Oh, dear. I'm kidding, except I'm not. We are, in fact, out of time. But, yeah, I am feeling a great dread is falling on me that we are not going to be able to discuss that whole sentence. The last two sentences on this slide are a doozy. Yeah. And Captain Mo, I agree. We still have to go back to the sentence. I deliberately, without apology, skipped the sentence about Frodo longing to stay. Yeah. Oh, don't worry, Ambrosius Aurelianus. We don't have to complete 2 whole slides. Next week, we're going to do a slide and a half, I'm sure. Not even a half. Look, it's only just a couple sentences at the bottom of this one. All I will do is say this, because I don't want to, I'm not trying to have dodged things. I just vainly hoped that I might be able to avoid. No, I'm just kidding. What we get looks like a paradox. Notice the juxtaposition there at the end of that first paragraph and Frodo's quote. As if some other will was using his small voice. Darn it, he did it again! No subjunctive. As if some other will was, not as if some other will were using his small voice. Twice in one paragraph. Anyway, sorry, that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say is, as if some other will is using his voice. But what does the other will say in his voice? I will take the ring. The wills there, right? The other will and Frodo's will. There seems to be a paradox there. It seems to be an unashamed paradox there. I will take the ring. This is something Tom Hillman in his blog was just had a wonderful post on this several weeks back, maybe a couple of months back now, I can't remember. But he was talking about the importance of the use of the word will, how like shall is the more common future, just simple future helping verb, and that the word will tends to be used at times when it means will. When it means like, I choose. I will take the ring. I choose to take the ring. Not just I shall take the ring. Like, you know, I be taking the ring in the future tense, right? That's not what he's saying. He's saying something more significant than the ring shall be taken in the future tense by me, right? He is saying I will take the ring. I am making an act of will. And yet, as if some other will is using his voice. He also feels like a puppet of another will. So, I want to acknowledge that there seems to be some kind of paradox there. And I don't want to forget somebody who was saying this. Somebody earlier was emphasizing the importance of the verb, not just the I will, but the I will take, the ring. We'll get there. We'll talk about that too. And then we'll go back to his overwhelming longing. Might as well make it explicit what I was talking to Cook of Wooten Minor about earlier on. The question about that sentence. Do we think it possible that the ring is influencing Frodo? I will say it even more firmly. If the ring, I will say it firmly and not in the subjunctive mood. If the ring is influencing Frodo, that sentence is my number one candidate for where it is. I disbelieve quite strongly that there is anywhere else in this paragraph that he is being influenced by the ring. I don't think the Great Dread is the influence of the ring. I don't. It might seem like an obvious candidate, but I don't. I don't think it is. I think that if he is being influenced by the ring in this moment, and I'm not saying he is, but I'm saying if he is, I think it's there. But maybe you don't think so. Maybe you don't think that he is at all. Maybe you think he is somewhere else, but I'm going to take some convincing of that. So that's, yeah. Now, Timdoff, I'm not saying the other will using his small voice. See, again, I'm ready to fight. I mean, I'm ready to go to any lengths, right? I'm ready for fisticuffs with anybody who's going to try to convince me that the other will using his small voice is the ring. No way, man. 0% chance. 0% chance. I don't care. Go ahead and try to convince me. But I am as confident about anything in this passage or no way. No way. I utterly disbelieve it. I would argue with Tolkien himself if Tolkien told me that was the ring. I would fight with him. I'm telling you. So, but anyway, again, I'm not trying to close discussion. I'm just telling you, I'm going to take a lot of convincing. It's possible. You guys have talked me around to some things before. But yeah, I am ready to fight over that. But again, that's why I think, and again, I'm not asserting that I think that the ring is influencing Frodo there. I'm only saying I think that if it is, that's the spot. That's the spot. Yeah. I'm not saying I'd fist fight Tolkien over it, JJ. I'm just saying that I would be prepared to arm wrestle him. I don't know. It doesn't quite seem fair. Maybe a rap battle. Yeah. No, we would have an argument. If we fought over it, it would be, bringing analysis of the text to bear and seeing whose analysis fits better. Anyway. Okay. Now, again, I'm not saying I do not think that Tolkien does disagree with me there. But I'm saying that's how strongly I feel about this, that I'd be ready. But anyhow, so we'll see. Okay.
A rap battle would be more
A rap battle, maybe. Yeah,
close.
maybe more. Right. And then we'll move. All right. We'll move on to, I don't know if we'll get to the elf friends of old next time, but we'll see. Look at this. Watch this. Oh, it's the end. Look at that. Oh, 2 slides and a fraction remaining. That's all we've got. Okay, but I'll let everybody go. Thanks, everybody. Well, not everybody, but thanks, everybody, for joining us. It is field trip time. We'll come back to these things next time. I'll stop not talking about these things and actually carry on not talking about them anymore. So we will resolve all of this stuff to everybody's excellent satisfaction next week. And then go right on through Elrond's response. I'm going to be very interested to look at Elrond's response to Frodo in conjunction with Gandalf's response to Bilbo, right? I think that parallel is going to be really interesting to see how Elrond responds when we compared to how Gandalf responded earlier on. So, all right. But field trip time now. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. All right. So, Valoria, how's it going?
Oh God, doing all right, and it was kind of interesting. So, like, the question is it the ring? Is it his destiny, or is it Hobbit bloody mindedness in there? And which is which?
You know, like there's it's not a simple situation, I think, but yeah, it's yeah. There's a lot going on there. There's definitely a lot going on there. Okay, so we're headed back up to Thokvist, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Thokvist.
All right. Back to Thokvist, and now we're going to go up into this new place that I've never been before. No, not Bree. I just totally hit the wrong. Oh my goodness! Yeah, I absolutely hit the wrong place. That's embarrassing. I hit the wrong milestone. I accidentally hit my prancing pony one instead of my Thokvist one. So I just teleported myself up the street about a quarter of a mile. Hang on, I'll be there in a minute. Gonna have to get there the longer way around. Oops, that was silly. Yeah, wasn't that a good use of the milestone, JJ? I think that's just exactly how it was drawn up.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, I'm going to pretend I didn't just notice a ruin outside the town of Bree that I've never seen before, because I'm focused on getting to Thokvist is what I'm focused on.
It would be good for next week, though. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's anything new. I mean, it's clearly an Arnorian tower. I just don't think I ever really noticed it before. It just really reinforces the really intriguing sense that, Lotro has always given of the history of the Bree land, right? And how, let's see, what's the name? Holtvis, that was it. I'm going to try to get up. Hang on. Yeah. I'm going to accept.
Anybody have a rally
yeah, I think somebody's rallying me. That's very kind. I was gonna make it. I was gonna go to Holdvis and then take some quick travel up from there. So, oh man, how did you get Willem Whisker up on top of the fire like that? He's like floating on the heat or standing on the smoke.
Well, heat rises, so naturally the cat would.
Right, it's pretty intense.
Science.
Science, right? Because science. Okay. All right. Excellent. Off we go up into the Misthallow, which is interesting because there were lots of. I've been noticing, of course, the mists, nice thick mists, which are really attractive through here. I love the way that the mist is hovering about everywhere. But the hallow part of it is the part I'm most curious about. So I want to see what exactly what hallow lies in the mist, or what makes the mist hallowed, or some other combination that I don't fully understand. But here's the...
Or maybe the men can't spell.
Right, here's the path not taken. And we've got some...
Oh, taken by bats. Many bats.
And we've got a cat. Okay, so we've got mostly wildlife attacking us here. Bats and... Oh dear, I've got lots of cats lying in ambush here.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to get down and shoot some of these guys.
I think so. Wow, yeah. Yeah, that one almost did for me. Okay.
Yeah, we get some healing over here or something.
I think he did do for my cat. Okay. All right. Anyway, I was just about to look over this cliff when I was so rudely ambushed. Ooh, hey, it's not a cliff. I can go down here.
Oh.
Is there anything other than a little overlook? Oh. Oh, no, I've completed the Beast Slayer deed, which is funny because I don't think I've actually killed any of them. Okay.
Built by association.
Right. We've got a charming willow down by the shore with some lily pads. Another one of those charming waterfalls with the mist up at the top. This is a lovely scenic view. All right, with the bridge over there.
Yeah, the broken, restored dwarf bridge.
Yeah, broken and the once and future dwarf bridge over there. And, okay. But other than a nice bucolic picnic spot down here, I don't think there's much else that we can see down here. I don't see any evidence of previous inhabitants. And we've still not seen anything up here other than wildlife, though the life has been substantially wild so far.
Yeah, just a bit.
And I want to remind you about the fact that we saw the same decorations on the bridges in Rohan.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. That was interesting. I don't know what to make of it.
Do the horse lords forge their own metal?
Well, other than the possibility that the wooden bridge over there is therefore possibly not a dwarf bridge, but a human bridge, which is made in the same traditions as the Rohirrim. Okay, all right. So the path just goes this way. Probably
it goes down to the willow we saw from the...
Oh, does it?
No.
It just circles around?
Looks like.
I think this is a different willow. Uh-oh. Badger attack, and then a moose. Or maybe it's not a different willow. I didn't see a path over there. I think this is a different path.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is. Yes, because this is coming up on the rocks that were dividing us from that area that we went down. That was over here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The boxed in area, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes, I see it now.
Yeah, there's that other willow. Right. An area of willows, truly.
A plethora.
Okay.
Tree bridge.
From the bottom that this tree looked like a tree we might possibly cross.
Ooh, nice view.
Okay. Yeah.
The trees look gigantic from this distance. Okay. We are truly on the edge of Mirkwood.
Yes. And approaching ever closer in this direction, and this is now a road. I guess it was always a path. Okay, so we've been
It's
following
kind of a goat path.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, there's no evidence of paving, and we see lots of roots, right? Like root systems through here. Like it was never a paved road.
Yeah, this looks like it would really hurt to walk on. Like you'd get a pulled ankle in a minute.
Oh, did you see the eyes?
Whoa, yeah, I did.
Their eyes in the darkness before the things resolve themselves into
Whoa.
something or other. Oh, it just got really dark.
It just got really dark.
Whoa. So we've just entered. Is this
Does it go away if we go back?
The Misthallow? I think it does.
I don't know.
It does. Let's see. I'm gonna back out of the misty dark dell where I can only see that because I can't see their eyes anymore from in here.
Okay, now it's coming back. You have to stand back here and then it comes back.
Okay. Right, and then we approach again. Okay, there it is.
See if we can see
Full
those
daylight.
eyes this time.
Full daylight, and there's the eyes floating around.
Oh, yeah. Let's go on. Let's go on. Let's go on. Let's go on. Oh, big
That is
warrior,
really
guys.
Cool.
Hey, don't get too close. There's some big old
What are those
little
things?
trolls.
Taurog warriors?
Taurog.
Taurogs? Are they
Troll kind, so I don't think we
yeah,
can
they
talk to
troll?
them. Wood troll.
Yeah. Wood trolls?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not friendly.
Yeah, they move like wood trolls. Huh. Look at these huge mushrooms over here.
These are human bones.
Or toadstools.
These big
Wait,
piles.
Human bones? Oh, the piles are bones? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Nice homey place.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
The trolls were a bit distracting, but once you get up close, you can kind of see.
Yeah.
Oh, look at all the little mushrooms standing up.
Right, that's what I was
Oh,
just
that's-
looking at. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, like you thought these were giant mushrooms over here, and then like
Yeah,
little.
no, right. I know I was looking at the little mushrooms before. I was distracted by the little mushrooms. But they're all over the place.
I was distracted by the giant pile of human remains.
Yeah, I overlooked that.
Typical scholar.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we got some sort of spotted amanita fly agaric mushrooms here. They're none of them very healthy or nice.
No, they don't look very nice. So, this is, in the end, just a path into Mirkwood?
I guess we're in Grazad-Gropor, which is
Oh,
well, we're still in Misthallow, but I wonder if it
nasty.
goes into Mirkwood.
This does not look wholesome in here. Oh dear, it's the troll's unhealthy looking home.
It's rather insalubrious.
Very insalubrious, the perfect word. Those glowing
Oh,
fungi look
I know
very
those
much
guys.
like the Moria ones, don't they?
Yeah, the ones that were infecting the orcs and making them
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah. I don't think they're quite the same,
Mm.
but they do put me in mind of them.
They are above ground instead of under it this time.
Yeah, and it almost looks like the mushrooms themselves have growths, right? Have an infection.
Yeah,
Um,
little tumory looking things on them.
It does connect to the southeast hologram. We can get through to Limlock from here. Whoa.
Wow.
Okay, so I thought that there were fires in here, but there aren't fires. There's just piles of bones and glowy.
You're a
mushrooms.
wood troll. I don't think you'd want a fire.
Right. Well, it's not that I didn't think that somewhat odd.
These are conveniently phosphorescing vegetation to provide light to adventurers.
Huh.
Oh, nope, that's a rib cage.
This can't be the Misthallow in question, can it? I mean, though it might be look at the tree. Look at that. I mean, the trees with their gaping mouths, right? I mean, the trees themselves look carnivorous, not unlike some other unfriendly trees that we have known before.
Yeah,
And they have
yeah.
bones in their mouths.
I recognize the type.
Yeah, exactly. Except their mouths are gaping open. So this is the actual Misthallow hologram. I mean, we haven't found anything else that would seem to give this place a name.
Yeah, except for, I have a thing on my compass is
Oh yes,
Grazad-Gropor.
right. No, yeah, that's the right. That's the name of this particular like little zone.
Ooh,
But
morals.
I'm just kind of wondering, like I'm wanting to discover why this place is called Misthallow, like the larger area.
Hmm.
Also,
Maybe it was once a sacred place, but it's since grown, you know.
been corrupted or something. That seems
Well, that's
plausible.
it's
Well,
Mirkwood's kind of famous for being blighted right now.
right, right. Huh. This isn't the path we came from, is it?
Nope.
It's not.
I have no way of knowing.
Yeah, I've kind of
Now it
lost my
says
bearings a bit.
entering the Mist Hollow. That's the thing on the screen.
This looks like. We didn't come this way before?
No.
Isn't this the road that we went up? Yeah, because we saw
Oh,
that off in that side.
ambushed.
So let's go this way. Oh, did you get ambushed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Having some bat issues. Yeah, I think this is bringing us up to the north now, which is a little bit closer to where deeper into where it says Misthallow on the map.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's just another camp up here.
Mm-hmm. More glowy mushrooms.
Yeah, more glowing mushrooms. I've curved around again. Wanting to head north. Is there a way out of this little troll town to the north? I don't know that there is.
Yeah, no, we're getting those
It's not
boxed-in
looking like
canyon
it.
walls
Yeah.
again.
That's what I'm fearing.
A trap.
Yeah. Oh dear. That's a cliff. I think.
Well, the cliff isn't necessarily a dead end.
Right. I mean, we could avail ourselves of the convenient cliff, potentially.
Well,
So it looks like we have to go around.
Greenstan, you dead? Uh-oh, no, I'm falling. I don't want to find out that way.
JJ says don't go down there.
Oh, okay. I believe JJ.
Don't go down there?
Don't go
Yep.
down there.
Why? What's down there?
Well, he says it's not convenient.
Convenient.
Fly, you fools.
He might have
He
to
says
be
it's
flash
not
stuck to get
convenient.
out.
I think convenient is probably one of the few words that would have gotten the professor to say, okay, let's not.
Okay. It's not convenient? Oh, well.
It's not scary, it's not deadly, it's inconvenient, and therefore out of bounds.
Therefore out of bounds, yeah. Oh, hi, everybody.
As of not of common interest.
Okay, so let's see, I think. No, I guess we have to. So there was nothing up here in the end other than some quite lovely willows and this little troll village, wood troll village. Okay. Okay. So I guess we have to go past Thokvist in order to. So I'm wondering about, the likely. Oops. I just fell down the inconvenient cliff, I think.
Well, you fell down a different part of the inconvenient cliff.
Oh, I think this part was the convenient part. I think it was because I found the road again. Oh, that was super convenient.
You're out of range.
I'm out of range and being chased by a troll, but the good news is I think I found the way out.
Well, keep running. His shield
to
wall
a
is forward.
place where only wild animals will kill me instead of trolls. Yeah. Yeah, so now I'm in the daylight being chased by 5 or 6 other kinds of mobs.
Short fractures lead to long delays.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, that was. Oh, is there even a goat chasing me now? That's kind of fun. Okay. Anyway, so I think we have to head back to Thokvist with half the forest in tow, but man, that troll is still after me.
I know it's not. That's not a goat. That's still the troll.
No, I saw a goat too, but I think he might have been running from the troll who was running after me. Look, I can see the line of things chasing us all the way up around. I'm back down now. Anyway, no,
It's
that's
like
fun.
a creep conga line.
Yeah. Hey, all right, there we go. I boldly escaped all of my foes. That was good.
I think your kitty cat's still stuck chasing whatever's being chased.
Oh, is it? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think I can resummon him now. There we go. Okay. Well, that was fun. I quite enjoyed that. So, all right. Well, it was lovely up here anyway. Whoa, there's a worm, a wood avonk.
Avonk.
Didn't see one of those before.
Is a gator.
Down here. Yeah.
So apparently this is Misthallow because all the critters here say Misthallow this and Misthallow that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the name of the overall region. I'm just trying to figure out why it's called that. Do you think it's this canyon over here with the waterfall that gave it its name?
Maybe it's a sacred spring under the waterfall.
Maybe.
Or just
gosh, there were
very
not
useful.
any of these avonk here before. The moose are rather nice though. The badgers are not. Boy, this place is lousy with avonk now.
Huh. I wonder if someone just has finished a deed before we showed up.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Okay, hey, look, there's green stand. See, your cliff did take you down to where I was hoping to go. All right, I'm going to go hide next to Mr. Wargsbane. Maybe he can protect me from all the bats. Doubt that troll will follow me in here. Okay.
Oh, that was a heck of a jog.
Okay, so we still can't find the way to where the Misthallow word is printed. Okay, because it looks like there's something there, but maybe not. Maybe that's just surrounded by mountains. Okay, well, that was an interesting dell, and we found some interesting creatures and some lovely scenery, but not much other than like that. Those mushrooms were rather alarming, but I assume it's supposed to be exactly the kind of to sort of bespeak the creeping corruption, right?
Yeah.
Of Mirkwood, and a very different sort, which I think is meant to evoke that whole Moria experience, perhaps. Okay, well, next time. I think it's time. I think next week is the day.
Fromsburg.
Yeah.
Fromsburg.
Next time we go to Fromsburg. That's what it is. And
All
there
right.
doesn't seem to be, I see no stable master at Fromsburg. So that makes me suspect the worst. But
No, there is one a little bit to the northeast that you'll be using.
right. Yeah. This dude up here. Yeah. Yeah. We'll head up there after Fromsburg, and then we got to go and figure out what these eagles are about over here.
That's
If we-
gonna be my favorite place.
If we can get up the river there. So we'll kind of go around counterclockwise here. We'll go Widdershins about the wells of Langflood here, and then we'll head up, I think, to Elderslade and then Ered Mithrin, maybe. But anyway, cool. Yeah, and then we'll probably, maybe after Fromsburg, we can head up to Hilfseld to give ourselves a new place, but I don't know. Thuckfist is fairly convenient for the whole rest of the area here. But anyway, fun exploring. Sorry, you're saying which?
Yeah, Hlithseld is the one you're going to want to use for Fromsburg, because Fromsburg isn't just down by the tip of that peninsula; it's all of that up by that road.
This
good to know.
whole thing up here. Okay.
That whole little Manhattan-y thing is Fromsburg.
Oh, this whole business
Manhattan.
up here. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I knew just what you meant. Right. Okay. All right.
All right.
Cool. So
All right.
we will. Oh wow. Yeah. So we will. We'll figure out. We'll probably head up then to that stable master, and then head into Fromsburg next time. Excellent. I'm so excited for Fromsburg next time. Anyway, thank you, intrepid fellow explorers, and we'll see you guys next week as we resolve paradoxes and discuss challenging passages, and then
choose our words carefully.
And then we shall get up to Fromsburg. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.